Chief Minister Omar Abdullah, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
You are back. Here you sit with me as Chief Minister, a job you had 10 years ago. And yet I'm very mindful that just 5 years ago, you were in detention. You were being held by the Indian authorities. What does it feel like now to be back as Chief Minister?
It's in some ways strange. As you said yourself, 5 years ago, I was a guest of the government. I was detained in the aftermath of what Government of India did to Jammu and Kashmir in terms of changing the constitutional relationship. Subsequent to that, I lost a parliament election last year. So to imagine that a few months after that defeat, I would be able to lead my party to a victory in the assembly elections and assume this office myself is at times surreal, but also very humbling, because it shows that in politics and perhaps in electoral politics, nothing is static.
Well, no, even clearly your own feelings are not static, because many people inside Jammu and Kashmir and outside are actually very surprised that you took the decision to run for the assembly inside Jammu and Kashmir, and of course your party won, and now you're back as Chief Minister, because this is what you said only in June of 2024. You said, I will not enter an assembly of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. That is the new definition of Jammu and Kashmir applied by the Delhi government, a demotion of the status of your own territory. You said, I won't do it. I will fight for statehood to be restored. I will not humiliate myself by entering this Union Territory Assembly. Well, you changed your mind, didn't you?
I did.
Why?
Because people whose opinion matters to me, and also total strangers reached out to me over the course of the few months before the elections, particularly after this statement of mine, and basically asked me one question, that if this assembly is not good enough for me, how is it good enough for them either to contest or to even vote for? And I didn't have an answer to that question.
You could have told them to boycott it, not
No,
to give Delhi the sort of legitimation of fighting.
Well, Delhi would have got it anyway. Delhi would have got an assembly anyway. And that assembly would have been an assembly without a large part of the population of Jammu and Kashmir that would have boycotted that assembly election.
But you referred to humiliation, and there are people inside Jammu and Kashmir who truly believe you are now engaging in a humiliating exercise, that you are in essence nothing more than a stooge, a puppet, who is allowing Modi and his government to do what they will with Jammu and Kashmir.
No, absolutely not. I think the BJP and the government at the center have done what they had to do with Jammu and Kashmir. Our job now is to try and claw back some of what was taken away from us, and particularly to restore Jammu and Kashmir to its status as a state rather than a union territory. We believe that the promises, the commitments made by the Prime Minister, by the Home Minister, by their representatives in the Supreme Court need to be fulfilled. And that is what we're pushing for.
But in your own party, the National Conference, there are politicians, senior colleagues of yours, who think the way you're going about it is entirely wrong. They say that your softly approach won't work. They want you to be much clearer in your immediate condemnation of the continuation of what in essence is a demotion of your territory's statehood.
I don't think I could have been clearer.
Well, you said recently, you said, hoping for the restoration of, as it's known, Article 370, that is the long-standing principle by which Jammu and Kashmir gets its special autonomous status. Hoping for restoration of this from the people who snatched it from us would be foolish. All we can do is keep the issue alive.
Hoping. I said that asking for it back from the people who took it away from us would be foolish, which is true.
So you've given up?
No, I haven't given up. No, absolutely not. If we had given up, we wouldn't have passed a resolution in the Assembly asking for special status of Jammu and Kashmir to be restored and constitutional guarantees brought back as well.
You, in a recent event inside Jammu and Kashmir, I think it was the opening of a new tunnel, you stood beside Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You praised him. You talked about the level of trust that was being established with Mr. Modi. He smiled at you and actually made a joke about your photographic skills. It sounds like you and Modi are becoming pals.
No. I think working in a congenial relationship is not something that should be mistaken for friendship or an alliance. The National Conference is opposed to the BJP. We have been, we will remain. Things that the BJP is proposing to do in Parliament in the forthcoming session with regard to, let's say, the Common Civil Code or the Waqf Bill, which deals with Muslim religious properties, or for that matter, one nation, one election. We have opposed those. We will continue to oppose those. We will oppose anything that the BJP does that we believe damages the secular character of this country. That said, I believe that at least in the opening few months of my government, I owe it to the people of Jammu and Kashmir to try and establish a good working relationship with Government of India. If that fails to deliver on the promises that Government of India has made to us, obviously, we will relook at it.
Some of those national issues you just raised, which are hugely important, I will come back to. But just to continue on this issue of Jammu and Kashmir and its status and Mr. Modi, let me be blunt with you. Do you believe there is any possibility of Jammu and Kashmir getting its special autonomous status restored as long as Mr. Modi is Prime Minister of India?
No.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
And yet you're still going to have an amicable relationship with him?
Yes, because while Article 370 is important to Jammu and Kashmir and we're not going to give up on it, so is statehood, so are the day-to-day issues that govern the lives of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And therefore, while we will continue to keep the issue alive, we will also fight on the fronts that I mentioned.
So let's talk about those day-to-day issues, because it seems to me the people in your territory are very confused about who actually holds the reins of power. You're chief minister, but there is still a lieutenant governor appointed from Delhi, and as far as I can understand it, he has much more power than you do.
Well, I wouldn't say much more power, but he has more power than governors normally have.
Who controls the police?
In a union territory, the lieutenant governor does.
See, I think many of your own people believe that you really don't have the power to deliver change. You made big promises in the run-up to the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly election. You said, for a start, that you would get rid of the Public Safety Act. Many people don't believe you have the power to do that.
No, we were also very clear when we told the people what we were promising in the elections, that some of the things would be possible to deliver as a union territory, and some of them would have to wait for statehood to be restored, which is why...
So you made promises you couldn't keep?
No, absolutely not. Restoration of statehood is also one of the promises that we worked with,
Yes, but on specific issues, I think you said that this was going back to 2022, after you'd been released from detention and you were trying to figure out politically how you could best navigate the situation. You said that if I ever come back to power in Jammu and Kashmir, I promise you, on day one, I'll get rid of the Public Safety Act.
Only as a state, and we will do it.
So you're not a state and you can't do it.
No, we're not a state, but we will be a state.
But the point is, doesn't that leave you looking powerless
to
your own people?
No. Look, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, contrary to how the rest of the country or some internationally might like to perceive them, are not fools. They know what the reality is. They knew what the reality was when they participated in the assembly elections. They knew the limitations that the current system would place on an elected government, which is why they are keen to see this government fight and keep pressing Government of India to fulfill its commitment to restore statehood to Jammu and Kashmir, and that's what we're doing.
Just one point about the Public Safety Act. There are many people, again, in your territory who deeply resent the fact that your party, the National Conference, which of course, in essence, has been in the hands of your family, your father and your grandfather for generations, it was your party that passed that act. And under that act, which has been in place, I believe, since the 1970s, hundreds, thousands of people in Jammu and Kashmir have been detained without trial. You now have the power to continue to detain people without trial?
Well, actually, no, because as you rightly pointed out in an earlier question, the police is under the Lieutenant Governor. And therefore,
I see. So on this issue, you are enjoying the fact that you're powerless, and you're saying, if this detention process continues, it won't be my fault.
No, exactly. We won't be the ones utilizing the law. If we were, we wouldn't be utilizing it.
But why you did in the past, why would people believe that? Because from 2010 to 14, hundreds and hundreds of people were detained without trial under your chief ministership.
Well, circumstances in Jammu and Kashmir were slightly different. We never claimed normalcy. We never claimed complete peace. We never claimed that there was an end to street protests, as is being claimed now. That law may have been necessary under very different circumstances then. We believe it's not necessary now and can be done away with.
I see. So let's dig a bit deeper into the current security situation, because I guess what's notable is that since you came back to the chief minister position after the election in the fall of last year, there's been quite an alarming uptick in violence in Jammu and Kashmir. Some very alarming incidents. There have been murders. There was one grenade attack in Srinagar. I think in Delhi they're beginning to say, oh, look, when Omar Abdullah's back and the chief minister's back in position, the security situation isn't as good as when the the governor was in complete control.
Actually, there hasn't been an alarming raise. Yes, there have been one or two incidents, unfortunate as they were. The attack on the construction camp of the tunnel that you referenced, inaugurated by the Prime Minister, and a handful of other incidents.
Yeah, well, quite a few incidents. I think 2 soldiers were killed in one incident in Baramulla as well.
Yes, but if you look at the overall situation in the last 5 years, I think last year would probably have been a bit more peaceful.
Your father, who was chief minister, remains a powerful voice in Jammu and Kashmir, and also, of course, a senior figure in your own National Conference party. He appears in recent statements to be blaming Pakistan for a new level of meddling in your territory. He says Pakistan could well be the source of terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. He warned Pakistan to put an end to what it is doing. He said to Islamabad, find a way to be friends, otherwise issues will arise. Do you share your dad's belief that Pakistan is meddling again?
Well, I don't think they ever stopped meddling. It would be foolish for any of us to suggest that what Jammu and Kashmir has seen has been purely indigenous, without any outside assistance whatsoever. That said, trying to get Pakistan to take on board some of Government of India's concerns so that we can establish a friendly working relationship is something the National Conference has always talked about.
Is it happening in any way? I mean, you're speaking to me here in Delhi. I mean, when you talk to the BJP government, do you advise them that there may be scope for establishing a new level of dialogue?
At the moment, that scope that we would like to see isn't there.
Not at all.
Well, when you have the sort of attacks that you've had in Jammu and Kashmir over the last few years, the way security forces have been targeted, construction camps, etc., it becomes very difficult to tell Government of India that they have to talk.
Another element of the Modi BJP message about Jammu and Kashmir is that they believe and they say that revoking your special autonomous status was a pathway to modernization, to stronger economic growth and development in the territory. I guess they've had 5 years to try to prove that. As you look at your own territory today, do you think there is proof?
It's one of the areas on which my government and the Government of India will have to agree to disagree. We haven't seen the levels of investment or development that we would like to see.
And how are you going to deliver a new economic program?
We're working on a new industrial policy. We're working on a new tourism policy. I've actually been out of Jammu and Kashmir for a few days working on tourism promotion. We are pushing very hard to complete some of the projects that actually started when I was previously Chief Minister. to generate hydroelectricity, because I sincerely believe that the more electricity we generate in Jammu and Kashmir, the better Jammu and Kashmir's economic position will be.
You know what many, particularly young and educated Kashmiris say in cities like Srinagar? They say that the fundamental problem is that 60% of the jobs in your territory are reserved for disadvantaged peoples, whether it be defined by caste or by ethnic, tribal background and origin. So 60% of the jobs are reserved, and yet 70% of the population are not getting access to those reserved jobs because they don't have the right label. These young people want that situation to change, and they look to you and some promises you've made that you will change it. But you can't, can you?
Well, that is something that is being addressed on two parallel tracks. One, the court, the High Court of Jammu and Kashmir is looking at it, and at the same time a cabinet subcommittee has been tasked with reaching out to the various stakeholders to see what options are available to us. The amount of room to play around with is limited.
Yeah, because you said in the manifesto for your election victory, you said the reservation policy, as it's known, will be reviewed. Any injustice and imbalance will be corrected. Yeah. But that was a promise you can't deliver.
Why not?
Because you just said it's in the hands of the courts.
No, I said there's a cabinet subcommittee that's tasked with looking at it.
But even if this cabinet subcommittee decides to make legislative acts, there's no guarantee the courts will accept them.
Well, we'll work our way through the courts and see. Let's not predict what the courts are going to do.
You see, again, this seems to be an area where there's disquiet inside your own party.
Well, look, I believe a political party must give space for differences of opinion.
But this is one of your most senior figures. If I may just name him and quote him, you have an MP in the national Lok Sabha Parliament here in Delhi, Aga Rahullah Mehdi, who says that he, unlike you, is determined to raise his voice for the youth of Jammu and Kashmir. He says, I'll do it even if Omar Abdullah won't. He says, people come out to vote so that local government is strong and that dictatorship is ended. And if you won't do that, he will.
Good. No problem.
Well, it is a problem.
Why is it a
problem? Because if the people of your territory begin to think he's a more powerful voice for them than you are, they're going to go to him.
Fine. That's what democracy is all about. If he gets to deliver more than I do, why should the people then not put him where I'm sitting? I'm all for it. That's what electoral democratic governments are all about.
Is there any part of you that is beginning to think, after a few months of Chief Minister in this sort of reduced union territory status rather than full statehood with autonomy, is any part of you beginning to think, you know what, I might have made a terrible mistake. I am in a very sticky position.
I'd be lying if I told you there weren't days or at least moments when I don't sit back and ask myself what the heck is going on. But I'm not given to giving up. I'm not given to walking away. I'm not given to not at least trying my level best to fulfill what has to be done. And I'm also reminded of the fact that the people of Jammu and Kashmir didn't elect me for 5 weeks or 5 months. They elected me for 5 years. I have 5 years to deliver on the promises that I've made. If I don't deliver, the people will make a choice different from the one they previously made, and that's their right.
Before we end, and you alluded to this early in the interview, I want to talk to you a little bit about the bigger picture in India as a whole, because Jammu and Kashmir has a special place in India. It's the territory that has a Muslim majority, and you are one of the nation's, most influential, well-known Muslim politicians. You've had a long time now to assess the impact of BJP rule in India. They've been in power for more than a decade. There's a word that's used, majoritarianism, to sort of capture the degree to which the BJP wants to use its authority in Delhi, in the parliament, to impose its will on the country. How alarmed are you as a Muslim by what you see happening?
Well, it is worrying. It is. And I've always made this point that just because the BJP wants to show that it doesn't believe in appeasing Muslims, because they've always accused the Congress of being the party of appeasing Muslims, and therefore the BJP wants to show that they're not doing the same thing. To actually systematically target Muslims to be able to prove that you don't appease is wrong. At the end of the day, India, at least for now, has the word secular in its constitution.
But it's interesting you tell me that with such passion in your voice, because again, some Muslims in this country, not just in Jammu and Kashmir, but Muslims throughout India, see you as a man who frankly puts too much faith in, for example, parliamentary democracy and the courts as an ultimate protection for Muslims. They look at, for example, proposals to impose this uniform civil code, which many Muslims feel will be targeted at some of their practices when it comes to marriage, inheritance, divorce, other things. They feel it could become anti-Muslim. Your message to them seems to be calm down, trust in democracy, trust in parliament.
It's not calm down, but what other alternative is there for 15% of the population? Can somebody point another alternative to me? If you don't trust your parliament, or at least other than the BJP, other political parties that rely on Muslim votes to get seats in parliament, who are currently allies of the BJP, if you can't rely on them to see the folly of their ways, if you can't rely on the courts to sort of keep these sort of forces in check, then what other option do 15% of the population have? Because they certainly can't rise up in arms against the majority of the population. I wouldn't for a moment suggest that they look for alternate homes in the neighborhood. So what other alternative is there other than to make use of the democratic options that are available to us?
That's quite a potentially bleak outlook for Muslims in this country.
It's not bleak. I haven't given up on either the parliament as an institution that can push back, or for that matter, the courts to deliver justice.
A final thought. As we said at the very beginning, you've been through quite a lot in the last 10 years. Do you think the next 10 years are going to be any easier?
You know, we did something like this 10 years ago. And if you had asked me 10 years ago that the next time we sit down opposite each other, you will be the chief minister of a union territory without the special status that Jammu and Kashmir enjoys, I wouldn't have believed you. And therefore, I have long given up predicting what 10 years hence will look like, because there really is no point.
Surely it's fair to say the trajectory is not in a great direction.
I think the worst that they could have done to Jammu and Kashmir has been done. Now it is our job to claw back some of it.
Omar Abdullah, we have to end there, but I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Chief Minister.